we will not be taking public comment tonight, but we will in the future. Probably set 5 or 10 minutes aside each meeting to take public comment, and if we can't answer the question right off the bat, we'll record it and get back to you, or publish the answer on the website. So my name's Tom Dolan. I'm one of the town councilors, and I'll be chairing this group. And this is my associate Bob Kerry from the town staff. He'll be the vice chair. And so I think what we'd like to do is, I've met all of you as part of the interview process, but I don't think many of you have met each other. And the public may not know who you are. So I'd like to start on my left and kind of go around and kind of reintroduce yourself. Just take about a minute or so and reintroduce yourself and why you want to be on this and what you think you bring to the party. So.
My name is Brian Lockhart. I graduated from SNHU a year ago with my bachelor's in environmental science. I'm very interested in this subject. It's a field I'd like to get into. I also have 2 small children, so I'd rather not have drinking contaminated water in our town. And that's pretty much the main reason why I'm here.
Thanks.
My name's Tommy Garside, also a resident of Londonderry, obviously. My water's directly contaminated. I work for a company who, we drill the holes, we do all the testing for this contamination, so we kind of, I don't know, look for it, plot it, see where it's coming from. And yeah, just like to see a resolution here.
Ann?
My name is Ann Fenn, and resident of Londonderry. The reason why I was interested was because I've spent most of my career in life working on environmental issues. 42 years working for both the U.S. Congress and the Environmental Protection Agency. That's my interest.
My name is Dave Robinson. I'm a civil engineer, lived in town about 5 years. I want to be on the board because my well's directly contaminated, but in addition to that, I just want to see a path forward to help all the residents of our community here. My background, like I mentioned, is in civil engineering. I do a lot of stormwater management, making sure that any effluent is cleaned properly before it's discharged. I do most of my work in Massachusetts, though, but my firm does have a office here in Manchester. So that's kind of my background, and that's why I decided to take up the task of joining the force.
Thanks, Dave.
Yeah.
Hi everyone, Kate McDonald. I'm also a resident, of course, of Londonderry for about 6 years. I have a master's degree in public health, so that's what brought me here. We just found out that our well is contaminated, so I'm really glad to be on this task force. And we have a 2-year-old daughter, so that's another reason. Thanks.
My name is Paul Lockwood. I've lived in Londonderry for 31 years. I've got a background in public health and the Department of Environmental Services, where I worked for about 25 years. I got my children and grandchildren living in town right over near Sunnycrest Farms, right in one of the contaminated areas. So I'm kind of hoping to help them out, and as well as everybody else in the town. This town's always been good to me, and I just wanted to return something to it.
Well, Paul just got his second COVID shot, so he's feeling a little under the weather. So Paul, if during the meeting,
But it's a good sickness.
if you feel start to deteriorate, just get up and go home, please.
My name is Jim Dukakis. I've been a resident in Londonderry for over 35 years. I worked for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers for 35 years before I retired from them 7 years ago. A lot of my background is in cleaning up environmental contamination. I did a lot of that for a Corps of Engineers when we were contracted out by EPA and various state agencies to do cleanup. So I think I have some, good knowledge of, what it takes to get the ball rolling and help do the cleanup. I'm also a registered professional engineer.
Thank you.
My name is Craig Durrett. I've lived in town straight for the last 17 years, lived here for a little bit before that, too. I've been wanting to get involved in town activities for a while, and this came up. My background is actually environmental assessment and cleanup. I've been doing that for 30-something years. And particularly over the last few years, I've gotten heavily involved in a lot of like new and upcoming contaminants, and when PFAS came around, when the issue of PFAS was brought up several years ago, I've got heavily involved. I've attended a lot of seminars and conferences on PFAS in groundwater and wastewater and sludges, so I've got a good background in it. Done enough sampling myself for this. That's what I bring to the table for the task force.
Well, thank you. Bob?
Yep, and Bob Carey, I'm the environmental engineer with the town of Londonderry, and obviously, and I've been chosen to be the vice chair. It is an important program that we're looking at, the issue that we're looking at, and look forward to helping all of you. I know some of you, I've heard of some of you, but I'm looking forward to meeting all of you as we move forward with this.
And George?
Hi there. Yeah, George Kaziolka. I'm a applications engineer with analog devices, but through my career, my degrees in engineering physics, been involved in like microwaves, lasers, electro-optics, underwater acoustics. So I basically just love all areas of technology, and I can like jump into anything with both feet and become an expert. I mean, it's for 20 years I was self-employed, and that's what I had to do. It's like, yes, I can do the job. Quick, figure out how to do it. Yeah, so yeah, I've been here in Londonderry for about 2.5 years, on a well, and so I knew that the neighbors had elevated levels of PFAS in their well water, had mine tested, and so I went back with a reminder email that went out yesterday, just to do a broader survey, and my contamination level is anywhere from like 2 to 5 times higher than the neighbors, but I'm still orange, not red. But anyways, so I have definitely a keen interest in making sure that this thing gets solved, and on a number of different levels. I think it was kind of mentioned at the the interview thing. It's like, do you do whole house, which is where I'm going, individual tap? Do you set up a central waterworks and run pipes to every one? And but yeah, so I'm very keen on digging into this and trying to find a solution that works for everyone.
Well, thank you all for being here. I know this is, the pay is not, certainly not attractive, but at zero. But your willingness to help the community is I'm very grateful for that. And I can speak for the whole council. You're all very well qualified. Let me do a couple of administrative things first. Mask policy. It's very similar, we run it very similar like what you do in a restaurant. If you are socially distanced and seated, you wearing a mask is optional. If you're up and about, or you're not socially distanced, wearing the mask is mandatory. So, and that's the policy that the council has employed during all our council meetings. So now you know. There is a state rule about the right to know. The public has a right to know what its government is doing. This is a government-sponsored committee. So we have a law in New Hampshire. It's in the statutes, and it's the law is if you care to look it up, it's the statute is 91:A. And what it basically says is that whenever we deliberate or meet, we must do it in public so that the public can observe and can watch and in some cases even participate. So depending on the committee's rules. We will submit there'll be an email coming out to you in the very near future, giving you more specific rules about how we engage in a public format and what the right to know rules are under that specific statute. Look forward to that, and please, when you get it, read it, and then read it again. What we don't want to do is have, and it's usually inadvertent breaking the rules because we didn't think about what those rules were. And those of you who aren't used to it, sometimes you have to think about it hard before it becomes second nature, like someone like me that's been working in this environment for quite some time. Or those of you who sit on other committees in the government committees know second nature what the rules are, but those of you who don't, that's okay that you don't, but just need to educate yourself. And if you have questions, please ask. Lisa is here, Lisa Drabek. She's the assistant town manager. She's also an attorney. And so she's available to help coach us on things like that, legal things like that. And you also can ask me, who've been doing this for quite some time, and I can help you as well. So those are the two administrative things I wanted to talk about is when you're required to wear your mask, and hopefully that's, as Paul and others and myself, I'm fully vaccinated now. As more and more people get vaccinated, we can hopefully return to normal sooner rather than later. I keep my fingers crossed. So I told you that we won't be engaged with public comment tonight, but starting with our next meeting, we will. We'll set aside 5 or 10 minutes at the beginning of the meeting where the public can come up and ask the committee questions. And like I said, if we don't know the answer, if it's not a quick answer, we'll note the question and we'll get back. We'll come up with an answer, and we'll probably publish the answer on our town website. Question, Q&A types of things. And we may have some frequently asked questions section too. So one of the things, and I'm going to look to Kate right away, is Kate, with your background, one of the things I'm going to ask you to do is to get involved with that part of the communication of how we communicate what we are doing, what we have done, and what we might be going to do, and what's the right way to communicate that, either with our website or beyond.
Okay.
And I'd like to use your expertise on that. I suspect for meeting frequency, when our charge first came out, was going to be a monthly meeting. Given, as Bob and I have been discussing prior to this meeting, given the number of tasks we're going to have, I don't think that's going to be frequent enough. So we're going to start with meeting bi-weekly. And if we need to, we can accelerate that to a weekly meeting, given the speed in which we are starting to accomplish the tasks in front of us. So try to be flexible. If at any time you aren't able to make a scheduled meeting, just let me know. And I'll have to make a judgment if we don't have enough to have a quorum, then I'll have to postpone the meeting. And I'll certainly try to make sure I observe. We won't call meetings on Memorial Day and things like that. So we'll try to be sensible about the whole thing. But if there's a specific time, oh gee, I'm going to be in Hawaii the week of May whatever to May whatever, let me know in advance and I can try to schedule our meetings around things like that. So just keep me informed if you would. So one of the things that is important is for us to stay focused. There's so much out there about pollution that we could get very easily distracted, not in a bad way, but in such a way that we'll never come to a reasonable conclusion that the residents need us to do. So So while I know, for example, that this garment that I have on is probably loaded with PFAS chemicals in the textile manufacturing, we're not talking about my sweatshirt. That's not gonna be an agenda item. We're only talking about, we're gonna narrow this to what the contaminants are in our well water. Okay, so as you think about, you know, the various things that interest you and things you've heard or articles you've read about this or that, if it's not very focused on well water contamination, then let's at least either put it aside or at least put it in a parking lot, that if we have time, maybe towards the end of our journey, we can take some of those things up. But right now, I think the concern in the community is well water contamination. So that's what we really want to focus on. So we have some expertise among the 9 of us. And one of the things that who was it that used to work at DES?
Paul?
Paul. So that's one of the areas that, well, I'm gonna split the committee up into groups of 3 initially to start with some initial tasks. And so, I'd like Paul and 2 other volunteers to take the lead in working with DES to investigate what are the safe limits of the various chemicals that are found in our systems, in our well water systems that we need to be testing for. That shouldn't be that difficult, but
Yeah, I think it's, since there is no, I mean, you have New Hampshire DES limits, but you don't have any sort of national limits. I think
Nothing
it's
set
gonna be
federally.
really
yeah,
difficult.
so we know that for example, for PFAS, the Hampshire limits are much tighter than the national EPA limits. So, well, we need to be aware of that, and DES knows all about that. So I'd like to assign that to Paul, and I'd like 2 other people who might be interested in getting involved in that. And by the way, Paul, I'm thinking that we should invite a DES representative to come to one of our future meetings relatively quickly in the next 1 or 2 meetings, to give us a teaching type briefing and teach us what are those chemicals and where do you find them and what are the limits, with a special emphasis on PFAS, because that is the pollutant of the day. Let me use it in that technique.
I think that is a dynamite idea, and I was actually gonna suggest, even before we did anything, that there sort of be an educational component for all of us, so that
Right.
we're all on the same plane.
Exactly, and that's where we
And
want to
there's-
start.
I mean, we can do the DEF, but there are tons of experts out there that we might want to have come in by Zoom. I don't know if you all have seen the movie yet, Dark Waters, because this is on Netflix, and it's all about PFAS. And it's all
Okay.
about the origin of PFAS.
Well,
just suggesting
let me
that.
say this, that's good. I think we're gonna find that we're all gonna see articles in
Right.
scientific periodicals, or articles in the news.
Yeah, these-
I was talking to my friend who works in Derry, who is a pollution expert. You're gonna find things like that. And I wanna kinda channel those into Kate. So Kate, for example, that book that Ann just held up, we should capture that, and you said it's a television?
There's a movie
There's a
that
movie?
came out.
So,
Yeah.
Kate, I'd like to capture that and put that as a resource, if you would, an educational resource, as we start building the website page. Things like that, or, you know, Paul comes back with, you know, here's a good book about arsenic or whatever, or here's a good article about PFAS, and here's a, you know, so, I think that's part of the information gathering, so that when people hear about this stuff, they say, a lot of people say, what is this? And we can direct them, say, before you ask that question of us, browse through the website, and you might answer your own question if you read a couple of these periodicals. So that's,
I'm thinking that, and maybe I can work with you on this, Kate, is that people aren't gonna necessarily get the book and read the book. I mean, we may need to do a fact sheet, two-page fact sheet for citizens on the basics of PFAS, sort of history, the basics, what are the, what's it, contamination level, the whole story, background on PFAS. Because most people have never heard of it.
right. So
I think
so
that's a
if you
great
think
idea.
about the first step, if you've got and some of you are already past this first step, if you're personally impacted, the first step is to find out about your own well. Londonderry citizen, John Smith, needs to find out about his own well. So one of the things he's gonna do is have his well tested. So Paul, as part of your charge with your two other assistants, is not only to talk to DES and find out what we should be testing and to what level, is to then survey the marketplace and find out which are the best companies that can do testing for citizens in Londonderry that are recognized as, I don't know if certified's the right word, but are recognized as being reputable. And what we'll do, and that's one of the reasons Lisa's here, what we'll do is when you start looking at that, we'll take that process through what we call the town purchasing policy about how we solicit bids with these companies. So we might say to the general population of the town is that if you want to get tested, if you want your well to be tested, here are several vendors that we might suggest you think about using because they are highly recommended, or the DES recommends them, or whatever, so that you get a reasonable result that we can trust. And then,
DES won't recommend a lab, neither would EPA.
Yeah, they'll
We're
have a
not
list
allowed
of
to.
certified labs. that
right,
can
they'll have a
provide-
list.
Yeah.
And so,
They
Do
have
you
a whole list,
envision
but
the
they won't.
town subcontracting out tests, or will this be simply a resource to be made to residents on testing?
TBD. But we're looking at that someday in the near future, we may get some financial assistance for this, but we're not sure what that will be, how robust that will be, and whether or not we should use it for testing or for mitigation or whatever. So the testing is the first thing, and I'm hearing a variety. Some of you already had tests done. I'm hearing numbers like $200 to $400 for a comprehensive test. Is that similar to what you guys have been paying?
Mine was, Golder Associates came and did mine at the request of DES and I guess St. Gobain, so
You know what the charge was, or you didn't see it?
I have no charge.
The analysis is, depending upon the lab and whether you have to ship it to a lab, is gonna be about $220 to $240 for,
Okay.
just for the PFAS analysis.
Right,
So, okay, so the 200 to 300 range is probably about right. So,
right.
so that's the first step. If somebody is concerned about their water quality, is to have it tested. You don't want to enter into a mitigation decision if you don't know if you've got bad water or not. So then the next step will be mitigation of the problem that may or may not be found. So I'm going to ask, I was able to tap Paul on the shoulder for that first task because I know he had DES experience. But I'd like a volunteer to take up this next one, which will be the mitigation step, to go out and look at different companies that offer mitigation, offer filter systems, or whatever the mitigation might be, to take two other members with that person, so like a subcommittee of 3 for mitigation, to look at, point of source type mitigation, whole house mitigation. There are different kinds of mitigation, and what the costs are approximately. Again, once we're ready to get into that deeper, we will again take it through the town purchasing policy and ask for competitive bids. To say, hey, if we have several hundred folks in Londonderry who need a filter or a mitigation system, what would your price be, and what would it cover, and what the effectiveness of it, and what, you know, what's the cost for, you know, annual maintenance and all that stuff. And hopefully we can, with a volume of business, we can negotiate a good contract. So do I have a volunteer that would like to step up and say that they would like to be in charge of the mitigation thing, that this,
Sure.
I can step
George?
up or whatever.
and you were Craig?
Jim.
Jim? Craig's over here. You want to be on it with George?
Sure.
By the way, I had a question with regard to the first topic. It's more of a rhetorical question. Why would any environmental agency be dictating levels? I would presume that comes from some sort of, medical or health agency.
Yeah.
I think that's where it's grounded, yes. I know that, I do know, after talking to the DES folks, one of the reasons that they, and Paul, you can confirm this, one of the reasons why they dropped New Hampshire from 70 parts per billion on PFAS to 12, one of the reasons was because they found PFAS chemicals coming through breast milk from the mother to the baby. Now, the next question from a scientist is, so what? What does that mean? Is it bad for the baby? Or do we not know yet? Or we also heard it characterized, this is part of the education we need, is it's a forever chemical that when it gets in your body, it never leaves. So it's an accumulating chemical.
It's globally in everyone's bloodstream.
Right, so the question is, does that matter? Does it matter? That it's-
Exactly.
We don't know, but we would like to find out what DES knows and why do they believe that. So it's kind of to your point, we want to evaluate the science to some degree. But we need to be reasonable. We know that this is in litigation. All the states around us, in fact, I think New Hampshire is the only state that has the limit at 12. All other states are at 70 parts per billion. So it would, if you think legally, if you're a member of that, a senior member of that company, why you might react to one state's limits versus versus the federal limit, and is that part of the New Hampshire's right, everybody else is wrong type of equation? So it's at least within their probably desire to want to understand what they're going to do for New Hampshire, if anything, at that level of 12 parts per billion versus the 70 parts per billion that every other. Are all the other states going to lower it to 12?
No.
We don't know.
Once the feds come out with drinking water standards, then the states will take those drinking water standards or be more strict.
So
They can't be less strict
So
than the
all I'm
feds.
saying is that's a point of reasonableness, and that's, you get different colors when you get your water evaluation, whether you're yellow, orange, or red, or whatever. And we need to find out from DES, is it we're not sure about PFAS, or we're definitely sure for these 8 reasons, and we need to hear that. So George's gonna take the lead on the mitigation piece, and Brian's gonna help. Do we have a third person that wants to help on the mitigation?
I'll volunteer for the mitigation.
Dave?
Yeah, I've already started looking into some systems, so that sounds great.
Okay, and let's go back, who wants to help Paul on the,
Paul.
and Brian? And a third person to work on what the standards ought to be?
I'll join you, Paul.
Thank
We're in this, no,
Yeah, Either way, I don't know what the groups are, so I'm sort of waiting to hear what the groups are.
We'll get there. So, I envision what we'll do is, after, I think the DES piece is the first piece. And the earlier we can get them in, Paul, the better. And then once what will happen shortly after that is I'm thinking about a workshop. A workshop where we bring in those companies that can test your well, about how they do it, what they look for, and we will set up a workshop over across the street, either in the high school gym or the high school cafeteria. Kind of like a trade show, if any of you been to a trade show, and we'll ask these testing companies that are candidates to come in and set up little small discussion areas where people from the public can come in and walk around and see the different companies and, I like this company or that company or whatever, and kind of educate themselves about the water testing piece. And then,
The only thing I'm wondering is, you may want to have with the workshop, you may want to have a workshop before that, just as an educational workshop, which is set up even similar to your suggestion, have a few tables, have a few experts.
Yep.
Allow the citizens to come and talk to some of those
Right.
folks.
that's
For a
what,
lead
that's
speaker.
what I think we should do.
Okay,
And then also a follow-up workshop with the mitigation companies that you guys come up with. And they can explain to you that, all right, if you're interested in a point of source filter system that sits in the kitchen and it gives you a separate faucet where your soap dispenser used to be, and here's what it looks like, it'll be mounted underneath your sink, and these are filters that you have to change once a year, and this is what it costs, and you can hook up your refrigerator line to it if you want to get drinking water out of your refrigerator, or here's a whole house system, and they'll show you what that looks like, and so forth. So people can look at that and make educated guesses afterwards, say, well, I think I want to do the point of source, or I think I want to do a whole house system or whatever for filtering, and we'll look at what the associated costs are with that. Again, we're not ready to discuss cost sharing from the government. We're just not there yet. We don't know what, if any, sources of revenue are gonna be there. We've been told there might be some available. As soon as we get that, then we can start thinking about parsing that out and saying how much we can contribute to the homeowner's expense. And what about those homeowners that have already put in a system? We gotta talk about that too. But again, that will probably be very dependent on the amount of money that we have and how it gets distributed fairly amongst the community.
So I had a quick question on, I guess, the timing, chicken and egg kind of thing. Workshops, early versus later. My thinking is to put together, for instance, like the fact sheets on, various reasons why, what typical systems can do, and
Right.
have people educated first before the
Yeah.
potential suppliers come in, so
Very
they can
good
get
idea.
asked the harder questions.
Right.
In-
And we can
in-
put that on our website, and we can, people can perhaps request or download some PDFs about the different kinds of systems, and I see, Kate, you're writing rapidly. So the third group I'm looking for is to help Katie with the communication piece of it. So, Ann, would you be able to do that with Katie? And who else did I not, who hasn't been selected yet? Craig, are you, did I put you on a team yet?
No.
You want to help Katie with the communication piece and how we
Sure.
gather the information? Now, again,
I've got
you're
a
not
ton of
gonna be,
information right here.
you're not
Lot-
gonna
lot
be
of stuff
saddled
here.
with these tasks for the entire, this is just to get us started. I think the thing with DES from Paul, I think that will be a relatively short task, and then those folks can go off and work on something else. But I think also, working with our purchasing department, I think once we start understanding what some of these things cost and who are the available folks that can do it for those costs, I think that's gonna answer a lot of questions, because right now people have their hands up in the air, many people, and say, I don't know what to do, I don't know where to go, I don't even know what to test for. We can answer all those questions. Now, What we can't answer tonight is who's gonna pay for it. And all those things. We might have those answers some shortly down the road, but it would be wrong of me to try to promise anything now and create expectations that might be hard to fulfill later, so.
We need a group, though, to look at that, to look at sources of funding, whether it's congressional sources of funding, since there is a task force
Yeah.
within the Congress of 150 people.
Well, we have, let me say
You know,
that,
Superfund, there are lots of different
I have
sources.
I'm taking that task. And I have the town manager also working that task, and the assistant town manager, which is sitting across the room from you, also on that. So we have our octopus legs, if you will, into the state and federal government to make sure that we're on top of funding that may become available, whether it's from the federal level or the state level.
Okay.
So we're very keen on that. And I know a few things that I'm not speaking about tonight, because again, it's not nailed down. There's gonna be some money, but some of the things, for example, that aren't nailed down is what you can use the money for. Is it just testing? Is it just mitigation? Or is it only things in the future? You can't, well, gee, I just put a filter system in 2 months ago. Can I get some help, get repayment on that? I don't know. We don't know how that money, what the strings are on that. So we're gonna look at all that and make sure that we provide the best benefit for our residents here in Londonderry. And we have a lot of eager ears that are hearing these issues that we have in both the state and federal government. So I can tell you that they are energized and they're working to try to get us some financial help. Too early here in March to reveal any of that because it's so preliminary and the rules around it haven't even been drawn up yet. So if someone could watch a meeting like this and say, hey, honey, we're gonna get $1,000 for, and it might not happen, and then people spend money thinking they're gonna get reimbursed, and it doesn't happen, so it's best if we just sit on our hands off of that piece of it, the financial piece of it, for a little while. I don't think it's gonna be too much longer, but as soon as I know something, I will talk about it here in public. But for right now, it's a wait and see. I think the story is a positive story, but it's not fully explainable yet. And I really wouldn't be doing the right thing if I told you a bunch of rumors and only half of them came true. So all I can say is stay tuned. One of the other things that I'm going to ask for is if somebody would volunteer to be the committee secretary. And what that entails is some administrative tasks like taking minutes and getting those published on our website. Again, we want to make sure that people who didn't get a chance to come and sit live or watch it on TV could go on the website and can click on a link that replays the video, or just read the minutes if it's probably a one-page document. So does anyone want to volunteer to be a secretary, be an officer of the? We have a chairman, we have a vice chairman. Well, we need a third officer called secretary. I can name a secretary, but I like volunteers better. Anybody?
Every other board has a staff member doing that.
Well, I could ask a staff member to come in, but I'm gonna have to pay them time and a half, and I would rather, being economically minded as I am, I'd rather do it with someone who's not gonna charge the town significant amount of money. Kate, is that something that you think you could do?
Yeah, I'll do it.
You knew I was gonna circle
I
around.
guess.
All right, I just named Kate as a secretary, and you'll get special license plates, Kate.
Yay. Is there a template you use for notes?
Okay, I'll reach out to you.
Okay.
Yeah, like I said before, our meeting frequency, I think let's start off at 2 weeks, every 2 weeks. You'll get a notice very shortly in the mail. I'd rather not do Zoom, I'd rather do in-person meetings. I think it's much more effective. I'm running Zoom meetings up at the State House, and they are awful. It just, the meeting lasts twice as long as it needs to last, and it's hard for people in the public to follow those Zoom meetings. So this is, much of what we're doing is public education. Some of you sitting around here are already deep into the problem because you've already got known contamination systems, and you're probably already working the testing and the mitigation. So you're deep into it. Someone who is just moving to town and doesn't really know much about this, I'd rather not confuse them with Zoom meetings. I think we're all safe here. Like I said, with a mask policy, we're socially distanced right now. And if you, like I said, if you're up and about, you want to go to the restroom or whatever, I just ask you to wear your mask. Or if you want to chat with the person next to you, hey, I think this Dolan guy is crazy. Just put your mask on before you say that, and that's okay. And if you feel uncomfortable wearing your mask, as long as you're seated and you're distanced, you're free to take it off. Like Brian doesn't have a mask on, he's fine. He's socially distanced. George, I'm sorry.
Oh,
George.
yeah, George.
I'm sorry.
What if you're fully vaccinated?
Well, we don't have a niche in the policy that takes I'm fully vaccinated.
Me too.
But we don't have a niche in there that says if you're fully vaccinated, you don't need a mask, because the person that you might be next to doesn't, I make sure people know about mine.
Yeah.
But the person next to you may not know, and they might be concerned. So we're really, for those people who are fully vaccinated, we're asking you to wear your mask just out of courtesy for the other people around you, so they're not afraid or concerned. There is a lot of fear in our society right now. We want to try to mitigate that as well. Okay, I'm going to open it up for some questions. I've been talking a lot, and I'm getting a little hoarse, so let's go around the room. What questions do you have about the future, or about any of the assignments that have been made, and what we're going to be doing next?
I'll chime in.
Yeah.
One of the things I've been thinking about for a long time is the biggest thing from seeing what's out in social media and people talking is the amount of misinformation and disinformation that's out there. So certainly having an educational component where we can apprise the public, bring them all on the same page, and all of us on the same page, because actually a lot of stuff that was spoken about here that we already tonight, I've actually got slide presentations from seminars and webinars I've been involved in over the last year. Perfect. Which perfectly explain that, as well as how the standards have been developed. A lot of things that we were talking about, trying to gather information, so a lot of this stuff will help, I think, all our committees.
Sure. I mean,
in that area.
It's a great point, Craig. Part of the charge of this committee is to do just that, is to educate the community as to what the problem is and also how to fix it. So as you come across things, or you have some standard slide packs, we can set things up. And if you want to carve out 10 or 15 minutes at a future meeting, let me know, and we'll set it up. We'll have it set to the projector, and we can show it if you think there's a point of education that is worthwhile.
There certainly is a lot of them already done for us, so we don't have to recreate the wheel.
So one of the things, and I explained it at the start of the meeting, we're really trying to focus on well water quality and mitigation of that. We don't want to expand the discussion into other sources of PFAS or other sources of pollution that may be air pollution or maybe, something. This field is so fertile with issues and chemicals that we could spend years and just make a slight dent in it. So we really don't want to do that. We want to be very narrowly focused on well water.
So we're not gonna look at public water supply,
Well,
just private
as a
wells?
solution.
I'm just curious, I'm just
We may
trying to
look
figure
at public water supply as a solution.
Yeah, because that's what.
We're gonna, I'm calling that the nuclear solution. And what I mean by that is, we
So
have
expensive.
preliminary data that says that's somewhere between $100 and $200 million cost to the community, which obviously would have to be a bond that would have to go before the voters, and they would vote on it. It would probably take up their tax rate, probably $4 or $5 a thousand. It's very expensive. We have also been advised, if you're gonna put a townwide water system in and dig up all the roads, you might as well put a townwide sewer system in too while the roads are dug up. That adds even more. So that may be the ultimate solution, but we're not gonna go there, we're not gonna pass go and go right to a townwide water solution yet.
Yeah,
If
no, I
all these
wasn't
other things
suggesting
don't make
that as a
sense.
solution, I was just wondering in terms of the focus.
Right.
The focus is gonna be on private wells versus public
Right.
water.
Right, we know about around 15% of the town is on a townwide water system now.
Okay,
And that water primarily is provided by Pennachuck, which is in Nashua. And Pennachuck buys, for this side of the river, they buy the water from Manchester Waterworks, which gets its water primarily from two sources. They get it from Lake Massabesic, and they get it from the river. And they have to obviously do a lot more cleaning of the water from the river than they do from the lake. But, so the process is they buy the water from Manchester Waterworks, and then they meter it into your homes under their name. So you get a bill from Pennachuck. Just to get a feel for, if you were on that system, I'm on it now, because my house sits on top of an old Superfund site, and so the developer couldn't use well water in the neighborhood. He had to, the state made him put in townwide water in that neighborhood because of the Superfund site. But I pay about $50 a month for water. And if I put my sprinkler on, as long as we're not in a drought, if I put my sprinkler on and water the grass, it goes to about $150 a month. So townwide water is not real cheap. It's moderately expensive. And I think Pennachuck just put in a request to go up by about 20% in their cost. So the price is going up. But, and to your point, that may be a solution set that needs to be evaluated. We might look at house-by-house solutions, and we may go back to the town council and say, here's what we think this is gonna cost, and don't forget, you
Or
have.
may get questions from people saying, hey, I'm on public water, should I have my water tested at my tap to make sure that the public water is okay?
Right, and I would never say don't do it, but I don't have my water tested because I know that Pennachuck has water tested all the time and monitors it and makes sure that it's clean. One thing that some people are very picky about their water, as they should be. Some people don't like fluoride in the water for teeth, that people put in for teeth. And you could get that if we have a townwide water system, you could get fluoride that might be in the water that you may not want. So that there may not be a panacea out there. If you're against things like fluoride in your water, then you're probably not gonna want a townwide system, because that's probably in most water systems. There's only a very few that don't have fluoride in them. So Ann, to your point, I think that a townwide water system is on the table. It's probably at the very end of the table. It won't be one of the early things that we'll talk about, because it's, I would say, at least a 7 to 10 year solution in the future, and the people that are concerned now are concerned today. And what can they do today? Maybe what they do today for house-by-house mitigation might still be warranted while they wait for a townwide water system to be put in place. So, again,
Yeah, I mean, some people are gonna say, can we get bottled water?
right,
Can the state pay for bottled water, or can Saint Gobain pay for bottled water, or, and can they pay for it, you know, for the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? So I think there are lots of public health implications, and even those folks who are on public water may be concerned about their public water, and they may want to get their own, you know,
Right.
wells.
it's not a bad idea to have your, whatever the source of your water is, it's not a bad
Right.
idea to have it tested
I
periodically.
agree, yep.
Tom,
Just for your peace of mind, yes.
if I can just add, DES already requires that all community water systems, the non-transient ones, schools, daycares and that, are being tested quarterly now for PFAS. That's already in place. I know we're doing it over
Yeah.
where I work too, so that is happening. And under the UCMR 3 program, the unregulated contaminant monitoring rule a few years back, all water systems in the country serving over 10,000 people had to be tested for PFAS. Now, of course, EPA's finally getting on the ball about thinking they're gonna develop standards
Right.
for the UCMR 5, which won't be final in rule until December this year, is gonna mandate that all public water systems over the next 5 years, during wave, test for close to 30, it's 29 PFAS, different PFAS compounds.
Wow.
So they can research that.
Well,
But those results will not be in for a few years.
We do know, and Paul will find this out when he talks to DES, we do know that right now, High Range Road is pretty much the line of demarcation, where if you're west of High Range Road, you're gonna get bottled water if you have contamination and so forth. If you're east of High Range Road and you have PFAS, you won't. And that is not scientifically based. We'll hear that from DES. That's by decree, by judge's decree, that he drew a line and says that's where it's gonna be. So it's not scientifically based. So if you think, well, we know that we're east of High Range Road, so we're safe. No, that's not true. It's non-scientifically based. It's not, you know, here's where we've tested a whole bunch of areas, and here's where the contamination is, and here's where it drops off. And no, that's not how it was determined. So we need to keep that in mind as we go through this. Yeah, you have a comment?
Tom, yeah, I was kind of wondering if maybe we should have DES's geologist that's in charge of the whole study here, you know, come to the meeting and explain everything, you know, what they've done so far, where they're at and all that. I mean, just reading the information, you know, that I see online, you know, DES put out a report, and I know they have St. Gobain's consultant, Golder, doing all these well samples, even in town, testing wells. And when I read, you know, when I went through and counted up, it looked like they're gonna test 350 wells in Londonderry. They had all the streets listed. I guess one of the questions is, are they gonna do it, and how long is it gonna take them, and all that?
Well, Paul, Brian, and Tony, that's a good question for DES when you.
I know his name is, I read, I think his name is Jeffrey Motz. And
There was a guy from DES that came to several of our meetings here over the past year and a half, who just retired. It was too bad, because he was a
Clark
very
Freese.
senior guy. What's that?
Is that
Clark
Brandon?
Freese, the assistant commissioner.
Who is it?
Clark Freese.
Yes.
Yeah, I saw that public meeting, yeah.
Yeah, so
He was here with Brendan Kernan, who's the
Right.
head of the,
Brendan is good, though. Brendan.
Yeah.
Brendan is good.
been there for quite a while.
I was disappointed, because we had Clark's ear, but he has since retired during this COVID period. So we lost him, but we do have the state's, believe me, we have the state's attention. You have several of our state reps in town, and we also have the Speaker of the House, who's also from Londonderry, so he can wield some authority at the state.
Because sometimes I've seen too where if like St. Gobain, if, you know, since they're saying that the contamination is coming out of them, and if they start treating the water and all that, eventually the plume can shrink. And over time, people that say have a remediation system in their house may not need it, say in 10 years down the road. I've seen that happen quite a bit too.
Right, and that's why even after the remediation, I think people should get their water tested.
Yeah.
If you're, for example, if you have remediation and you're paying for annual filters and you don't need them anymore, that's important to know, to save the money on the filters. The filters aren't cheap. I'm aware, I use a remediation system in a house that I have outside of Londonderry that is a reverse osmosis system that costs me about $300 a year in filters, to change the filters. So if at some point in time, the need for that remediation goes away, I can save $300 a year. So I would anticipate if the community was able to help people with the cost of these mitigation systems, I would expect that the help would be a one-time help, a capital cost help, and would not be a maintenance type of help. So if you put a system in that required annual filters changes, I don't think it would be a reasonable expectation that the town would pay for those filter changes. But won't be my single decision. That will be a decision of the council. But anybody else have any questions? We're getting close to 8 o'clock, so we're gonna try to hold this to an hour tonight. Any other questions or thoughts, concerns? We're not gonna go to the public.
Okay. No, go ahead.
But next time we will.
I was just gonna bring up the public health issues.
Mhm.
You're gonna get a lot of people saying, you know, okay, we understand there's the PFAS. What are the problems with PFAS? You know, what sorts of cancers can it cause? What sorts of, and I do think that either we should maybe talk about that in the fact sheet. We should probably have some experts come and speak with us
Yeah.
about public health impacts.
Do you have,
There's,
you have anybody on the hook that is?
well, I've got some names. I can,
Well,
talk to
I think
them.
you're on the communication arm of the committee,
Right,
so I think that falls within that. So if you want to reach out and see if you can tap someone on the shoulder to come talk to us about potential health concerns,
okay,
that would be helpful and educational, I think.
great, okay.
Thanks, Ann, and work with Katie and would be, I think, an important information piece for the committee to have and for the community to have.
Now, if we want to volunteer for other committees, can we do that too?
Sure, you can.
Okay,
If you wanna have extra time or want to help out, absolutely, yeah, so,
Okay.
yeah, anyone shouldn't feel limited if they say, gee, I could help out. Nick says, I can help out on the educating people on what we should be testing water for. Jump right in. I would talk to Paul and get your feet wet with that. You guys were selected, not by alphabetical order, you were selected because of your demonstrated expertise in one of these fields or a related field that could help us. So, we're not looking for a warm body, we're looking for your brain. And so please, put your brain to work and help us. The one thing I ask you to do, though, is to stay focused on well water. We can get very easily distracted and not complete our tasks in a timely way and to help. Our mission is really to help people in the community. And if it helps you individually, that's good too, because some of you already have issues that you're aware of. Everybody good with meeting in 2 weeks?
Tom,
Yes.
if I could, I'm looking at the town calendar for when other meetings are scheduled to make sure that this room will be open. I believe we can do 2 weeks from today, which would be April 7th. The only other meeting that evening is a planning board meeting, but it looks like it's virtual. So
Okay. Yeah, we'll target April 7th. And I think, like I said, tonight was introductory, kind of understanding what we're gonna be doing, and I think we're gonna get into a rhythm. And as we get into that rhythm, you guys are gonna get more excited about the various elements that you're gonna be pursuing, and that's gonna be very refreshing to hear that excitement. And if you want, in your individual areas, if you want some time at the meeting dedicated to your topic, let me know, and I'll carve out that space on our agenda. If Ann's gonna I want 10 minutes to talk about who I've spoken to about health concerns, for example. Or Paul might say, I need 20 minutes because I'm bringing a guy from DES and he's gonna talk about X, Y, and Z, whatever. So let me know in advance, and I'll craft the agenda to fit the expertise or the level of excitement that you have, and let's all share it. And if George has 3 articles that he knows would be very helpful to us, give those to Katie, and what we'll do is we'll have them published on our local website and under our articles of interest, or however we think it ought to be done, and we'll have it there for all of us to read and for the public to read. Now, one of the things I'd like to do, if you are comfortable with it, is I'd like you to share with me your points of contact, a telephone number and an email address, if you're comfortable doing that. That way, I can communicate directly with you, and you'll have mine, so you can communicate directly with me. Yeah.
Tom, if you'd like, I can have Kirby put together a roster based on the email addresses, and I believe we asked for phone numbers. And
Okay.
if we didn't, we'll reach out and get those from you guys.
So we probably already have them, we just need to put them together, and I'd like to share that so that you guys can talk to each other. You're gonna get a reminder in the email about how the right to know law works, and how communication is okay, and when it's not okay, because there are those instances, and I will tell you this, that if we're gonna make a decision, any decision that we make has to be made in public. We can't make a decision in private and then come and at the meeting say, we made these 3 decisions since our last meeting. We have to do that in public. And that's just part of the public's right to know that we're doing things and that they have an opportunity to observe. And like I said, in some cases, starting next week, they're also gonna have an opportunity to participate. Now, I'm gonna limit that so that we're not overtaken by public comment and have the whole meeting on public comment, because that's gonna inhibit our ability to get the work done that we have scheduled. But I also wanna give the public a chance to chime in, because they might have a concern, especially gonna be looking for areas that the public may have a concern that we haven't considered yet. Gee, describe a situation. Gee, we haven't thought of that, and so that we can think about it. There will be elements of public comment that we will have already covered, and it's gonna be pretty standard, and we can either give them a quick answer, or we can point them to the website about what the solution or what the answer to their question be, so we don't do a lot of things over and over again.
You know, one of the things, because there is so much legitimate, totally justifiable interest in this topic, that you might want to think about is even having a public meeting once a month for the public to come in, as well as coming into these meetings, where they can hear where we are, what's going on.
Well, every meeting's gonna be public.
Yeah, no, I get that, but I'm wondering if you want to have like one public meeting just for the public to come in and ask questions.
We could, let's see what the public's interest is. We are gonna have a couple of workshops where that's designed really for the public. But good point, we'll keep that in mind. All right, if there are no other questions, I think we can,
Oh,
yes.
So, this is just regarding, one comment was, I'm just on the east side of High Range Road. Yeah, I'm on High Range Road, but the wrong side, I guess, or right side, whatever. But in my looking around the neighborhood, looking at dots, yeah, mine was, like I said, several times higher than even the ones in the zone.
right,
So that was interesting. But the other thing was to do with testing, getting your water tested periodically, whether it's, town water, whether it's like mediated water. What about bottled water? Are there standards for that?
That's never tested.
you
It's already
testing
tested.
bottled water, you mean?
No, are there standards for bottled
No.
water?
No.
So what's the purpose in giving people bottled water when
We
you
do
can't
know,
guarantee the quality?
DES has advised us that they do test bottled water, and there are a couple of brands that they warned us to avoid. So, that's a good question think about that when Paul brings his guy in. I don't remember what the names of them were, but they were, it was questionable. You know that a lot of bottled water is not spring water. I think many of you know that a lot of bottled water is just run through a filter. It's just,
Or bath water?
I think there's actually a chart of all the bottled water they have tested.
oh, there is?
Yep.
And some were pulled off from the market because of that.
Oh, good, okay, there's some more information. Some was pulled off the market already. So we'll ask that to see if there's any, DES, do you know of any bottled water that's still on the market that is something we should avoid? Because the last time we asked them, the answer was yes. But we'll put that in our information that Katie will be actively managing. This is, here are some choices of bottled water, and they're all been tested, and they're all good. And here's some to avoid, if there are any.
One other thing, the focus is on well water.
Yes,
So I did send a link out earlier. I spent the day actually just researching a bunch of stuff and was watching this documentary. And so PFAS was a part of it, but what it was about was like biosolids that come out of sewage treatment plants. And how, even the EPA basically gives it a thumbs up for use as fertilizer. And when that stuff is assayed, it's got PFASs, it's got drugs, it's got all kinds of crap in there.
right.
So that stuff will make its way into the ground, into the wells.
Yeah, we are learning, I mean, we are in a farming community. We have a lot of apples in the community, but we have a lot of non-apple farming as well. And we know in the distant past, there were a lot of chemicals used for fertilizer and pesticides and stuff that aren't good. And we're learning that now. We've stopped using DDT across the country, but that was a bad one.
Yeah.
So, when we talk to DES, we're gonna continue to help have them educate us. What chemicals are artificially introduced to the ground and eventually to the water, and what are naturally occurring chemicals like arsenic that are in the ground, and how do we avoid that? Is it okay, is it hard to filter that out? And, what kind of systems do they have to be? Reverse osmosis, or can it be charcoal filter, or what are the various types of technology to filter that stuff out?
Right.
And radon's another one that
Yeah.
you gotta be careful of. Radon is typically, people think of it as radon gas that comes up through the basement, because we live on so much granite, where the radon is. But there's also radon, in some cases, in people's well water,
Yeah.
that vaporizes if you're taking a shower. And we certainly don't wanna have guidance and no more showers in town. But if you take a shower and it becomes steamy, and you have a lot of radon, then you could be breathing radon in that way without having radon gas come up. You might be bringing it up through your water. So at the risk of panicking people that might be watching this, that's something that we may want to be suggesting people test for. It may not be something that we're willing as a town to mitigate, but it helps. Knowledge is power. If you know you have a radon problem, you can now make a decision to mitigate it or not.
Mhm.
I had a house with radon in Londonderry, that it was about a $1,200 system that was put in place. Dug a hole in the basement floor, put a whole bunch of gravel in, and brought a pipe outside the house from that under the foundation up to the top of the roof with a fan in it, which basically created negative pressure, air pressure, under the foundation to take any radon gas that may have been under the foundation and out that pipe and exited at the top of the roof. I had no idea there was radon, but during a home inspection,
Mhm.
before buying the house, that's how they discovered it. And that's how it was mitigated. It was about a $1,200, it's probably a lot more now, because that was 20 years ago, but it's probably double that by now, but
Yeah.
that was the mitigation technique.
Yeah. And going back to the well water, I guess there's also traceability. So let's say you do have a water mitigation system, you've got your charcoal, canisters that are absorbing the PFASs, then what? Does it go into the town dump? Is there a proper recycling process?
There's a landfill usually for that.
Right, the only way to
Landfill it.
really deal with that is incineration,
Yeah.
where you just decompose it into
But then it goes
the
in
raw,
the air.
yeah,
Right.
Right.
Well, good thing is, we don't have a town dump,
okay.
so that's good. Our refuse is all trucked out of the community, but it's going into some community, and I think typically those types of landfills are lined, so things hopefully don't leach down below them, but to your point, that's a good question, is what happens to those chemicals that are
Yeah, I mean, it's the same as, like, say, electric vehicles. People feel good because they're all green driving electric vehicles. All they've really done is created a super long exhaust pipe, because the power for that vehicle is coming from, a coal-fired plant or, oil-fired plant or whatever. So it's, you can't focus too narrowly either, and just kind of like push the problems off to another township, another state, another country.
Right.
Like a lot of crap was sent over to China, for instance, electronic
Computers,
waste
yeah.
and stuff.
Right.
And
They
because,
don't-
If you
they-
ever
they
read,
recently changed, they don't
Cat
like
in the Hat.
taking up recycling plastics anymore.
Well, it's sort of like the children's book, and I know Dr. Seuss is not exactly top pinnacle right now, but Cat in the Hat. I mean, he comes in, there's a pink spot, someplace tries to get rid of the pink, that's not, it says that pink spot, it's the same thing. And it's, I think it's true with asbestos, it's true with, mercury, it's true with tons and tons of different kinds of chemicals.
Right.
The people in the committee here,
But-
you're all, you were chosen as very capable individuals. Don't be embarrassed if you get stuck and you want some help. Raise your hand electronically or otherwise to myself or to Bob, and it will help you get unstuck. Okay, so don't, if you get no for an answer, don't accept that. We'll help you. Lisa will help advise on especially any legal issues, and Bob and I will help advise on getting unstuck as you go through and you'll get better as you do this. Like I said, you'll get in a rhythm, and that's the best place to be. When you go home tonight, your head's gonna be spinning about all the things that you might like to do, but feel maybe a little constrained or not sure how to get started. Raise your hand, or give us a call, send me an email, whatever, we'll help you. So you won't be alone trying to figure it out. Bob, you have anything to add before we adjourn?
I think you've done it at this point. So just, again, I want to thank all the volunteers and members for stepping up and helping us through this process. We really do appreciate that.
And like I said, the assistant town's manager's name is Lisa Draybrook. She's sitting over there with her laptop, taking notes. Lisa is an excellent resource for the community. She's not only part of the leadership for the town, but she is also an attorney, so she has that side of the equation to keep us all straight. And she was the one that made sure I told you about the right to know law 91A. That's one of the very important things that we need to keep track of so that we don't run amiss or get a complaint to the state that we're not following the rules. And I will make sure, as best I can, that we do follow the rules. And again, watch for a memo from Lisa or from someone in the town that Lisa will help generate about what 91A means and the right to know law means and what your obligations are, about what you can do and what you can't do in terms of communication. It's not that you can't communicate with each other, it just has to be done a certain way. Okay, and I'll let Lisa expand on that so I don't get dragged down into that mess. All right, if there are no other questions or comments, I'm going to adjourn the meeting and we'll get back together on the 7th at 7 o'clock.